Thank you, Madam Clerk. So the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Fody that council rise and report from in camera. Council met in camera and following outcomes were the in camera minutes from September 27th, 2022 were adopted as circulated. Committee and board applications were reviewed by council during the in camera. The following members were appointed now in open session. Committee of Adjustment will be comprised of Jim Kehoe, Bruce Craig, Rob Johnson, Catherine Graham, Paul Veenstra. The Municipal Heritage Committee will be comprised of Art Shaw, Keith Sly, Marcus Letourneau, James Sainer, and Jonathan Landon. Council provided direction to staff to re-advertise applications for the leads in that Thousand Islands Public Library Board. We were unable to form, we did not receive sufficient applications, so we are going back out. So if you have an interest in the Public Library Board, we would ask that you please submit your application to our clerk. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And it's carried. Thank you. Okay. Now back to our regular agenda and the adoption of the agenda.
Comment?
Sorry.
Comment?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, regarding number 5, the adoption of the agenda, I would move that 13.1 under bylaws be taken off the agenda. It was a motion was defeated in the committee of the whole. Thank you.
13.101. Sorry, I was looking at 5. Right. Bylaws.
Yeah.
It has to be, it wasn't defeated. It has to be ratified here. So it was discussed at committee of the whole, but it comes back here to be further discussed.
I had clarification during the week with the clerk. Maybe she could clarify. I was told it should come off the menu. It shouldn't have been on the agenda.
Oh, I apologize. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the bylaw has to be removed from the agenda because the motion was lost at the committee of the whole meeting.
My apologies. Okay, so 13.1 is being removed. Okay, so that's amended as amended.
So I guess we're voting on amendment then.
Okay, so the motion would read, as long as Councillor Fody and Councillor Jameson are okay with the agenda be adopted as amended. Is that a friendly amendment you're okay with? Go ahead, Councillor Fody. No, not at this point. Okay, that the agenda be adopted as amended. So Councillor Fody and Councillor Jameson, you're okay with that? Go ahead.
Not quite following, sorry, Your Worship, I'm not quite following 13.1 because I was hoping we have the opportunity to revisit it.
I believe that in order to revisit it, there needs to be a motion to reconsider at the time of the bylaw. It has to be taken out of the consent agenda, and that a motion needs to be made at that time for reconsideration.
At that time? And okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the motion reads that the agenda be adopted as amended. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? And we're carried. Thank you. So the next motion is moved by Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Fody, that the October 11th, 2022 and December 5th, 2020 public meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the October 11th, 2022 and November 15th, 2022 council meeting minutes and the December 5th, 2022 committee of the whole meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the September 27th, 2022 and October 25th, 2022 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Discussion on any of these minutes, and are there any errors or omissions? I see no hands going up, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Now, we are at the consent agenda. I'm having trouble speaking. Consent agenda point for staff reports. And there's a list of staff reports. So if there's one that needs to be removed, then that would be the 8.2. Is that correct? That's the one. Okay. So we would, on the motion, moved by Councillor Jameson and seconded by Councillor Lackey, that council approves staff reports as recommended at the December 5th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, except for planning report SR 156-22. Okay. So that's being removed, the planning report from the staff reports. File D14-2022-009 Application for zoning bylaw amendment 322 Stratford Road to rezone the existing boathouse to allow a sundeck on the flat roof. So that's been removed from the staff reports. And that's a motion from Councillor Jameson and seconded by Councillor Lackey. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
As discussion on the motion to remove 8.2, what is the point of taking it off the agenda?
Because otherwise, if we approve it, then we are approving that staff report.
Very good.
Okay. Am I right in saying that? I just want to make sure that I haven't. Go ahead, Councillor Voting.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Does 8.8 not overlap 8.2?
I don't think so. That's the council approved the staff reports as recommended at the December 5th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, except for planning report SR 156-22. Okay. Okay. As long as we're on the same page. Any discussion on the motion? And so everybody, unless there's another staff report that needs to be pulled for further discussion. Seeing none, I'll go. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Farrell.
8.7, a brief discussion on the committee board bylaw. Just a couple of small points I'd like to clarify.
Motion's on the table, so you can ask for clarification. We
Yeah,
don't need to
yeah.
remove it from the consent
Oh.
agenda.
At this time?
Yep.
2 points. One, the term limits. Is everyone on board with that? I did see the bailout that if we didn't have people, a council could appoint beyond the term limits. I'm not big on term limits in this case. And secondly, an issue that is going to come up later tonight is the appointment through an election year to December 31st. So this will apply to the incoming boards, the incoming committees. As I understand it is written, when it comes to the bylaw does not repeal any previous bylaws. Therefore, it doesn't supersede anything. So the bylaw is going to come up that we have the 31st for the incoming committees. However, previous committees, in my opinion, would fall under their bylaw, which was never repealed. That has implications this week. I'm going to leave it at that because I will have further comments. So unless someone wants to ask me what I'm thinking here.
I'll let the clerk speak to that for a second.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Councillor Grill, if you could provide a little bit more clarification on the repealed bylaws, please.
If you don't repeal a bylaw stays. One bylaw does not overrun another bylaw. Resolutions, yes. bylaws no. So my point is that in 2019, we appointed committees for, quote, the duration of council. Council ended. We're the new council. Previous council ended in November or whatever it was for the election or after the election, correct? It did not go to December 31st. So therefore, without a doubt by bylaw, we don't have committees right now. The new committees are being appointed this evening. And therefore, there's a committee meeting tomorrow, 1 o'clock. It would be a committee that is not the appointed committee because we didn't repeal a former bylaw, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the December 31st applies to the incoming. It does not apply to the outgoing. That's my point. Thank you. A lot of words there.
So do you have the specific bylaw that you're speaking to? The old one?
The old one, sure. It's, give me 1 second. Give me
So
a bit of time here.
Madam Planner had her hand up, so I'm not sure if she can add something to this while you're looking.
Thank you. Through you. I was just going to add that the Committee of Adjustment bylaw that applies to the Committee of Adjustment indicates that the members remain in effect until another committee is appointed. So it doesn't run with the term.
Just for the Committee of Adjustment.
Just for the Committee of Adjustment.
Can we bring those forward, please? I'd like to read that.
Do you want to table this until we can pull that up? Unless there's further comments on any of the other items. So Councillor Gorell, I believe you're correct in saying that one bylaw does not supersede another bylaw. So if there was a previous bylaw in place, it would have to be repealed and replaced with the new bylaw.
Correct.
Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Just trying to, your worship, understand what Councillor Gorell's concern is. I'm not.
The
following.
concern is a procedural problem
Okay.
that someone else in the community might be aware of and be critical of. And I just would like clarification. It's something somewhat beyond my pay grade. But when I read it, and I do have the bylaw from 2019, it's 19007. And it states, as they always do, this bylaw, that this bylaw shall come into force and effect upon passing. And earlier on, it says that the following are hereby appointed to the committee for the term of council. So we are putting in a new bylaw, which is fine. It's just that if it applies, we have a board sitting tomorrow, which I'm suggesting, and I don't know this to be clear, but we have a board sitting tomorrow that may not be our legal. Our end of council was in November.
Board sits tomorrow.
It's the Committee of Adjustment.
So it is important that
And might I point out that the Committee of Adjustment was moved forward by 2 full weeks because of Christmas falling on a very awkward date. So it's understandable, but had it not been moved forward, then that might have given time for a new Committee of Adjustment to be sitting. Those are just very detailed, granular points, but we're opening ourselves up to something there from an individual perhaps, or individuals in this township.
So just while the clerk continues to look up the bylaw, the planner did note that the terms of reference for that particular committee, for Committee of Adjustment, does say that they are in force until the appointment of a new committee. So we might be covered in that regard. But having said that, the repeal of the old bylaw should still.
Well, we just appointed a new committee, so there's your new committee.
Okay, I'm going to let the clerk speak, and then I'm going to.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I would just like to add that in section 5.1, paragraph A, unless otherwise legislated, membership on all committees will expire on December 31st of a municipal election year. And that is stated in the committee and board bylaw.
Which bylaw?
The committee and board bylaw.
I'm sorry.
The committee and board bylaw. Yes.
No, the one, that's the new one. That would be the new bylaw
I think his.
that we haven't yet voted on. That's the issue I'm bringing up. I guess I'm done speaking. It
Well-
speaks for itself.
I just want to make sure that the point that Councillor Gorella is trying to make isn't just a overlap of the two. I'll leave it to the CAO and I'll let the clerk search around a little more.
I'm with Councillor Jameson. I'm not quite getting the fine part of the point that Councillor Gorell is making. However, just a committee of council will serve until it's replaced. And the bylaw appoints during the term. So the term of the previous council has ended. So we are seeking to pass a bylaw with respect to appointing new members. I don't see how that runs afoul of the 2019 bylaw.
And we don't have to repeal the previous bylaw because it expired.
Yeah.
We don't have to repeal it.
Did the committee also not expire? It said so right in the 2019 bylaw.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
That's my point. The committee are hereby appointed for the committees this term of council.
Correct. But the Committee of Adjustments, which is meeting tomorrow, continues on, notwithstanding,
Why?
because it's in their term of reference. It's an exception. And if you're looking at the terms of reference deal particularly with the Committee of Adjustments, and they're particular to that. You have an overall general bylaw, but then you've council's directed its mind through the terms of reference to a specific exception with respect to the committee continuing on, because the business of the committee has to continue on so that we can continue to process applications for zoning amendments and all that sort of stuff. If they automatically stopped, we could potentially go 2 months without being able to process any zoning applications and all that. So there's logic behind the exception to allow the committee to continue on.
Perhaps by the time later in the meeting, when we get to the bylaw, we can see that mandate for the Committee of Adjustment. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll recognize Councillor Jameson. Did you have a question for the CAO?
Well, Your Worship, I do have a question then with respect to fact that we've deferred the decision on the library board. The assumption I've had based on what I've read, and I could be dead wrong, is that board will carry on until such time as we choose and consummate a new board.
And is that based on the old bylaw or based on the new
Well,
bylaw or
I'm-
both?
Now I'm doubting everything I've read.
That's the thing.
So thank you, Councillor Gorell.
That actually might be something to do with the Libraries Act. With the library board.
Okay, I think the planners found, is this specific to the Committee of Adjustment that you're speaking to?
Yes.
Okay.
The Planning Act, section 44, sub 4 states that members of the committee shall hold office until their successors are appointed.
And that's,
Well, we just appointed them.
Hmm.
We just appointed the successors. Well, who's going to sit on tomorrow afternoon?
The existing committee.
Pardon?
the existing
The
committee.
existing committee will sit
But
tomorrow.
we have appointed a new board, a new committee.
So the new committee doesn't come into effect until January? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through your worship, thank you. The new committee wouldn't come into effect until December 31st.
Oh, until December 31st. Okay. So now it's clear. Okay. That's okay. I'd rather have this discussion and clarify. Then I understand now that the old committee is meeting tomorrow and is in place until the new committee is appointed. And I realize we're appointing them tonight, but it's as of December 31st based on the new terms of reference. Correct? Okay. Is that clear as mud for everybody? Okay. So going back to the motion that's on the floor in regards to staff reports, are there any other clarifying questions or comments to be made in regards to the reports that are in this motion? Go ahead.
Your
Go ahead,
worship,
Councillor.
may I propose a muddying question?
Oh, sure.
Just going back to the library. My assumption is the current library board carries on and they will not meet now until the middle of January. Carries on until such time as
The
new board is appointed. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that's correct.
Okay.
Again, just going back to the committee and board bylaw, I just want to clarify a few more items. Again, with the term of appointment, because it's in a legislative committee, that changes things, right? So unless otherwise legislated, membership on all committees will expire on December 31st.
Thank you.
Going forward. I don't understand how that can be.
Applied to the.
It's okay. Never mind.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
Are there any other questions in report in regards to 8.1 through to 8.7, save the one in regards and save 8.2? Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Okay. And so as far as staff reports, or sorry, gotta flip the page here. Information items. Motion comes from Brian, Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the information items be received and filed. So that is 9.1 through 9.7. Is there anything particular that the council would like to discuss in any further detail? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey, and then Councillor Jameson.
I'm sorry, your worship, and through you. I believe we were pulling out of the consent agenda 8.2. So do we not discuss it while it's still in?
So the motion to
Consent.
reconsider has to come forward in order for it to be discussed.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Lackey, Councillor Jameson, and then Councillor Bodie. Councillor Jameson, go ahead.
Just with respect, it's really just a question because plowing through the budget papers now and looking at the Conservation Authority budget with respect to that budget and a couple of other things that have bubbled up in looking at this. This will be discussed in the context of our budget.
Correct. We
Okay.
will discuss that in further detail at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions in regards to the items on the information reports? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bodie, I had you on the list and then Councillor.
That's okay. I'd like to acknowledge some proverbial chocolates on the Escott Waste site. It just came to print here now to make public what's been accomplished down there. We got our operations director here tonight. We got James Tuck here. And I think it should be pointed out and acknowledged the huge accomplishment made down there on the time.
Actually, I'll ask the director to come forward and speak to that specific point.
Thank you, through your worship. So just to reiterate the report, about a year ago, James approached me about, looking at the capacity of the waste site, James Tuck, and And at first I was like, yeah, no, we'll look into this. And he said, no, we're going to have Melrose out there doing the surveying for capacity. This is our opportunity to have a look, because I think there's some capacity in behind the fence. Where the closed section, it's not closed, but where the closed section of the waste site is. So, go ahead, have a look at it. We'll see what we have. And as a result of that, we found that we were a couple feet lower than where we should be. The compaction, the material had settled over time, resulting in some additional capacity. And, he said, this is our opportunity where we could probably open this up and put some more waste in there and gain some capacity. And that was the 4+ years, a rough estimate. If we fill that in, what we'd be looking at. So then once we had opened it up, and James was out on site the whole time for this one, we found that there was anywhere from 6 feet to 10 feet of cover material where we're required to have 2 feet. So we ended up pushing material back and compacting it even better and finding additional holes in there. And as a result, we're looking at 19+ years of capacity. And I'd like to recognize James for his efforts.
Here.
This waste site, when I started here, it was the white elephant in the room. We knew that it was coming. It was supposed to be closed within the first year of me being here. James had changed the compaction process out there. We'd gained another year, and then this next step, like I said, we're 19+ years. So this is one we don't have to worry about for a while. But at the same time, we are looking at moving forward and becoming more structured with the way that we're doing what we do. Putting hydro to the waste site, looking at pre-compaction bins and trying to gain even more compaction before it does make it to the face. And hopefully that 19 years will extend out even further. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the director? Go ahead, Councillor, maybe.
Thank you, Your Worshipman, through you. Again, I'd like to reiterate the same thing as Councillor Fody, that great job to see that this landfill site is going to be open for a few more years, and that we can count on it because it was looking pretty grim there for a while. But thank you very much for that. And with that, are we going to continue on with the Waste Committee, which I know Councillor Fody and I sit on, just to comment on getting something that's going to look a little further out, perhaps with our meetings?
That's an advisory working group, I should say.
Yes, working group.
Not an official committee, just for clarity. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
absolutely. Councillor Fody and I have had discussions about looking at what we can do with our organic waste. So we're looking at options for that. And I think that's a great topic to discuss with the waste management group moving forward. Some options that we have for dealing with our organic waste, where we're paying a lot of money right now for a service that I think that there are some efficiencies that we can have. Additionally, we are looking at doing the same thing that we did at Escott, potentially at Lansdowne as well. So we're having that surveyed, and we'll be looking at the results of that to see what the next steps are out there as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Just I would like to add my thanks. I know that when I first started with the municipality as mayor in 2018, one of the biggest shockers I had in the line items was the Melrose budget. Now, we had some challenges at that point in time. It became very clear why we had to pay experts to help us. Having said that, having someone on staff like Mr. Tuck, who's been dedicated to looking into these specific items along with the consultants, rather than just leaving it to the consultant to manage on their own, has made a world of difference. And we do appreciate your efforts, James. Thank you. It doesn't negate the fact that we need to find other alternatives to deal with waste. And I'm hopeful that the motion that came forward to county will resurface here in the very near future, as there seems to be an appetite to have further discussions about how we deal with waste in the United Counties as well as our own township. So thank you again. Any other discussion on any other information item? Go ahead, Councillor, maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. 9.6 about the municipal election. And one of the things I found very interesting was this, the stats, the bar graph that actually indicated our population and how they chose to vote. And I was very pleased to see that there was paper ballots. And I know I was a big proponent of that. And I think it still comes to point that we still have a population who wants to do that, as well as, and we've talked about this, our broadband and the computer and whether they even have a computer to do it with. So I think it's still important to, even 4 years down the road, to revisit and make sure that we're possibly servicing those who want to vote that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, the motion is that the information items be received and filed. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay, next item on the agenda is moved by Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Foti that council grant three readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-082, being a bylaw to authorize the township to enter into an agreement with the Ontario Clean Water Agency for the operation and the maintenance of municipal water and wastewater systems in the village of Lansdowne. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Worshipman, through you. One thing that I found very interesting in the report is that it's stated that we go to the curb stop and that the curb stop isn't part of our bill because it basically safeguards our water from being discharged without our notice because just how it's worded. And I thought it should have been after the curb stop. Just some clarity on that.
Can you
particular
give a
one.
page number?
Let me see where, I think I did do that. Once I find it, sorry, well, didn't bring my glasses. Page 31, F, I think it was.
Do you have the report in front of you, Director?
However, the curb stop is a municipal asset. So this would be up to and including the curb stop. We'll make
Yeah.
that revision.
Just how it's worded, it states to the curb stop.
Yes,
so
but the curb stop is included because our
Yeah.
water purveyor
Could be, yeah.
has to inspect the connection to our curb stop because like you said, that's our only safeguard to
Yeah.
our main.
Yeah, just clarity in the wording for
Yep.
me. Thanks.
We'll
Thank
take
you.
an extra look at that. Thank you. Is there anything else, Council, maybe? This is just in regards to the Clean Water Agency. Good. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item on the agenda is moved by Councillor Foti, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that council allocate $10,000 from Special Projects Reserve Fund to engage a consultant to prepare a detailed crossing safety assessment as required under the Rail Safety Act regarding whistle cessation for the intersection of the CN Railway at County Road 3 in Lansdowne, and that staff be directed to report to council on further costs for CN's review and support of the safety crossing assessment once such costs are known. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Lackey, and then Councillor Grau.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. This has been ongoing for quite a number of years. Probably before I was even elected for the first time, first term. And I think 10,000 is a small price to pay to see it one way or another. Finally, this is as far as we've ever gotten with this. And I would appreciate the support, which would enable us to do that. Not that we may make changes, but at least it tells us both points of view. Because there has been increased traffic on the rail, especially with the third line going through most of our municipality. And the increase, which I didn't realize, there's different whistles for different engines, which make different pitches of sound, which has been brought to my attention as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors involved, and I think this will give us much clarification.
Are there any other comments? Oh, sorry, I have Councillor Grell and then Councillor Jameson. Go ahead, Councillor Grell.
Thank you, through you, your worship. When I read that, the alarm bell went off down late in the report, basically when it seemed to indicate that CN would review the work and then CN estimate of the additional costs. that's CN we're talking about. I can only imagine the additional costs. And so are we throwing good money after bad? That's what scares me here. It's an unknown. It says here, CNN may insist that additional safety equipment be installed at the crossing. And as I understand it, that would be at our expense in the municipality. So again, judging by previous dealings, just to get the crossing mitigated here to make it smooth, it seemed to be a nightmare with CNN. I can't imagine that they're going to be happy. And I just simply can't imagine the cost that we're looking at. I might be wrong in my thinking, but some clarity would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Jameson and then Councillor Fody.
Just like to echo Councillor Gorell's concerns about this. Because as I read it, that $10,000 is just the first drop in a long potential cost for, but it isn't made clear in this memo. Why? I mean, it's a level crossing where they have made changes and the trains are isolated from traffic. They don't have them. They certainly made that change coming into Kingston when they changed the I want to say Counter Street, was it? Yeah. So I'm a little concerned that I'm not sure what the rationale is other than the inconvenience of the noise. But two, I'm not sure whether we want to go down this road because of the cost. And this 10,000 is just the tip. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me, through you. This was initiated by a petition, correct?
Years ago, yeah.
Oh, years ago, not recently. Okay, I was going to ask how many names are on that petition. From what I understand, people live in the village or any place that has railway crossing, they're quite frankly tone deaf to the sound of a train whistle. It's no different than people living in an airport couldn't tell you when they last heard a plane take off. But that I have the same concerns as Councillor Grell and Jameson. I looked at this before us here and I see that $10,000 as a tipping fee just to have a discussion. Because on page 2 at the very bottom, it actually states an estimate of the associated cost of the detailed crossing safety assessment by a qualified external professional engineer, CN's review, and the potential mitigation measures have been requested, but not received at the time of this report. Maybe they were not received as afraid to provide a fear method. I don't know. I'm not in favor. Let's put it that way. I think it's there. I think, as alluded to in my own beliefs, this is going to come back and going to cost us a small fortune. And you can bet the municipality is going to sign off with CN on any litigation should anybody get hit because they didn't hear the train whistle. I'm talking about a pedestrian. We have the crossings at the crossings for vehicles. And Brockville ran into this. They unfortunately have had a few people hit. People trying to run those. People, unfortunately, younger kids with headsets on. Not a great idea to be walking with your back to a train with a headset on. I think we're opening ourselves up to a liability pit here. That's just my own personal. And I can't get over the irony that this come forward after the CN had agreed to level all our crossings. I appreciate that.
Mm-mm. Any other comments or questions in regards to this motion that is on the floor? So I'll let Councillor Oki speak. I just have one question myself.
I just think, thank you, Your Worship, through you. I just think that the whistles are there for the protection of people and property. And they've been long-standing things. If you add up the number of people whose lives have probably been spared because of them, there is a certain factor there that I think might override the inconvenience factor of people complaining about the noise. Thank you.
Okay. So just to add my 2 cents to this, I lived on a farm that I could almost spit to the train from the back door. I didn't, no, I never did. However, it was ironic, 4 days after we sold that farm, there's a train derailment right at the farm, ironically enough. To Councillor Fode's point, honestly, for us, after you've lived there even 2 weeks, like you don't even notice it. Now, having said that, I wasn't as close as some of the individuals here in the village. I think that just to your point, Councillor Lackey, that if there was a petition, I'd like to know how long ago it is and how many people even still live in the village. And that's no snub to you for how long you've been on council. I would like to think that, not to say that some of those people still wouldn't be around, but are we talking about complaints from past homeowners and renters? Or are we talking about the current people? And I don't know, was there anything in the file, Director? Anything regarding this petition?
I did not see a file on this.
Okay. So I'll let Councillor Grell make one last point.
Just through you, Your Worship, I found the exact statement I wanted to mention. It says, and this is taking into account requirements of the Railway Safety Act. And then there's 6 points. Number 4 states, any mitigation measures identified by the safety assessment must be undertaken at the cost and expense of the municipality. That's my fear. That was what triggered my fear on cost. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any further comments or questions? Okay, Councillor Maybe, go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually back the tracks and I hear the train going by all the time. I'm almost blind to it almost all the time. The train whistle does not go off close proximity to me, but it does go off sometimes, be with the track and repair and whatever, and I still almost never hear it. It's just one of those things you do get very used to and you become oblivious to it. But the funny thing is, if the train makes an odd noise that you're not used to, you catch it. So
yeah, and just for the record, where I lived was a crossing and they did whistle at that crossing on Oregon. So I'm going to read the motion again, just to be clear before I call the question. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Fode, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that council allocate $10,000 from the Special Projects Reserve to engage a consultant to prepare a detailed crossing safety assessment as required under the Railway Safety Act, according to the whistle cessation for the intersection of CN Railway at County Road 3 in Lansdowne. And that staff be directed to report to council on further costs for CN's review and support the safety crossing assessment once such costs are known. So the motion is as read, and I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify. All those opposed? Okay, it is lost. Okay. Next item on the agenda. So planning report SR-159-22 Birches Lane signage on the Thousand Islands Parkway. Motion comes forward from Councillor Grell, seconded by Councillor Oki, that council approve the proposed location and directional signage for Birches Lane to be purchased and installed by the Ministry of Transportation on the north and south sides of the Thousand Islands Parkway. Any discussion on this motion? Go ahead, Councillor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship. Have the ministry given any indication on a timeline with the construction about to take place in Ivy Lee?
Not in Ivy Lee, that's
No, this is in
that'd be Rockport, would it not?
Yeah. Rockport.
No, I had the wrong village. With the construction about to take place in Rockport.
The ministry is prepared to do this. I believe the posts have been installed, but they're not putting the blades on until they have the council resolution.
It's because it's on our property. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So they just need permission to have them there. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay, administration report SR-157-22 recreation cost sharing agreement for the Lou Jeffries Arena for 2023 and 2024. Moved by Councillor Oki, seconded by Councillor Grell, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a recreation cost sharing agreement with the town of Gananoque regarding the Lou Jeffries Arena for 2-year term in the form attached to report SR-157-22. Discussion on this motion. Counselor Fody, then Counselor Lackey.
Reading this report, can we defer this? There's some serious number increases in there financially.
So are you looking to defer this until after the budget or during the budget?
Well, at least that far, yes, because you read some of the increases in there, they're significant. They're much different than the last agreement we had with the town on this subject.
Madam Treasurer or CAO, will that derail our budget talks, or can we add it in addition to in discussion at that time?
I'd be happy to discuss it during budget. I, in discussion with the CAO of Gananoque, I know that they are anxious to have some indication of what we're going to do because they are going through their budget as well. I will also point out that council can't pass the budget in an election year. It has to be passed
In January.
So we won't have a decision on, if we do defer this, we won't have a decision until at least into January on this. I don't know if that impacts SCAN particularly that much, but it's just a factor.
Okay. So I'll just deal with this for the time being. Are you satisfied with that if council wants the rest of it? Okay. Okay. So Counselor Lackey, and then I've got,
It's just a comment about the deferral, because if we're gonna talk
Oh.
about this in depth, then I'll wait till budget time, but on the same token, Gananoque can't pass their budget either till January.
correct.
So we're in the same boat, so.
Yep. So, Counselor Gorell, you have a comment or a question?
Just a question. I'm guessing that we will have an agreement of some sort. Would it be appropriate to do an apportionment of something to help alleviate the stress in Gananoque? I mean, I can't imagine us just saying, no, we're not going to have any agreement. We're just concerned about, strikes me, the increase. Is that something we could do?
I think the payments under the agreement are May 1st and December 1st. So we're okay.
So is there a motion to defer till the budget meeting? Counselor Jameson? And then Deputy Mayor Lackey? So motion to defer to the budget, which is
I
Thursday.
think that should be Councillor Fody's deferral.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so
Forward, sorry.
I'll motion to defer. I'll put Mr. Fody's name on it because you started this.
My apologies.
And then Counselor Jameson can second it. All those in favor of the motion to defer this until the budget meeting on the 15th? All those opposed? And that's carried. Okay. Okay, next item, oh no, we're done that one. Next item is administration report SR-165-22, appointment of an alternate member to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. And the motion comes forward by Councillor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Grell that council appoint someone as an alternate member to the Council of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville during the absence of the mayor, and that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-079. So the motion's on the floor to discuss who that individual will be, and the floor is open for suggestions. Councillor Jameson.
Like to propose Deputy Mayor Olkey for this position. We can drag him into it. I think the fact that we all voted for him to be deputy mayor, and also experience Gord brings from the Conservation Authority will probably come in handy. I realize this is the position that is a heartbeat away in the event of a problem, that the mayor can't attend a meeting, but still Gord's interest in the roads and interest in the conservation and his role as deputy mayor, from my point of view, positions him well to take that role on. So I nominate Gord.
Is there any other nominations? Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
I move nominations closed.
Well, there's already a motion on the floor. This is really just a suggestion at this point. So as long as there's no other names that come forward, I'll put Mr. Olkey's name in and then we'll vote on the motion to have Mr. Olkey as the appointee in my absence at the county council. Or deputy mayor, sorry. It's gonna take me a while. My apologies. Okay, so that council appoints Deputy Mayor Olkey as an alternate member to the Council of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville during the absence of the mayor, and that the council grant 3 readings and final passage bylaw number 22-079. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. You are the lucky winner. Good luck reading all the county documents.
Thank you, your worship, and you know my interest in history. I thought press gangs were illegal now, but anyway.
Okay, so that one's done. So Counselor Olkey is moving. I've got only a mover, no seconder on this, so I'll ask for the seconder. I'll read it. Moved by Counselor Olkey and asked for a seconder afterwards, whereas the objective research indicates that the influence of election signs on voter decisions is marginal. No, I did it. Oh, sorry, I must be out of order. My apologies. 4 or 5. I'm missing number 43, I guess. Somebody got it on their desk. Oh, here it is. Was at the bottom of the pile. Was out of order. Was out of order. That's a good thing. Somebody's keeping me in check. So moved by Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Maybe, whereas rooftop amenity space is currently not permitted use of marine facilities. And whereas there has been significant increase for the applications for such use under zoning exemptions. And whereas recognizing that applications often follow onward from committee of adjustment, conditional approvals, noting that flat roof marine facilities may be appropriate. And whereas the unintended consequence of the zoning amendment process requires council approval for individual exemption applications based on staff report recommendations. And whereas these planning reports require significant input, are challenging for staff under the guidance of the official plan, as it has often been demonstrated to equally apply to both proponents and opponents of said applications. Whereas it has been highlighted that dissent from said reports can trigger potential legal action through the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT. Therefore, be it resolved that issuing building permits for the construction of flat roof marine facilities be temporarily suspended until further review and clarity of policy for inclusion in zoning bylaw 07-079. I'm going to ask the planner to speak to this.
Thank you. Through you, under the building code, if an application comes in for a building permit that's compliant with zoning, the chief building official has no discretion in terms of whether or not a building permit can be issued. So procedurally, that's not something that can be done. The only mechanism to approach putting a moratorium or a stop on a certain form of development is an interim control bylaw. I have reached out to Township's legal counsel to get an opinion and some information procedurally how to look at this type of an approach. I'm not able to have a meeting with the lawyer until Friday this week. So as written, we can't enact procedurally what is in the resolution that's in front of council tonight. So we need further information and input from our lawyer.
So would this be a deferral in that regard until the legal?
It would be my
opinion came?
recommendation that it be deferred until we have the opportunity to discuss this with legal counsel.
Okay, so I had Councillor Olkey first and then Councillor Burrell.
Excuse me, it's my motion. I think I have the opportunity to speak first to the motion.
My
Under
apologies.
Robert's Rules of Order, would that be correct?
It is correct. My
Thank you.
apologies.
I want to make the point that this isn't out of anger. This isn't out of any particular case. What this is about is the process that has happened 4, perhaps 5 times, and it is going to occur again tomorrow afternoon at the Committee of Adjustment. There's one more issue of one illegally built, badly constructed, flat top boathouse that is being used or potentially being used as a non-permitted use. The problem we are having is that planning seems to have their hands tied once it goes through that committee of adjustment. The applicants, the contractors, just about everyone on the river and elsewhere is looking at this, and planners that they're hiring, the consultants, are looking at it going, oh, you just bring that up as a zoning exemption. We haven't turned one down yet. Pardon me, we're trying to turn one down. We did. It's a process here. Now, what I'm trying to do is nudge our departments to come up with an answer. I am not against flat roof boathouses. There are structural reasons for them. But as long as we have a non-permitted use, I don't like sitting as a council person as a rubber stamp for these approvals for the zoning exemption, which has been following. That is the reason I wrote this. I want to move our township in a direction, and it was, it was talked about some time ago, but now this is accelerating, and make no mistake, it is. And it's open season. A contractor's going to go and say, sir, you have the money to build a flat top boathouse because you should, because the committee of adjustments seem to be allowing you to project your living room out onto water space, which you do not own. And the only right that you have is granted to you by a zoning bylaw that says you can have an appropriate marine facility. But no, you can have your living room out there. So that is bad policy. And so I wrote this. We can take it off the agenda. You can throw it in the garbage pail. But I want this township to think seriously and quickly about it. If this interim control bylaw is appropriate, that's fine. But if there's something else needs to be done, why do these things, pardon me, what is the timing, for instance, on when an application comes to the planning department? Why, at what time do they have to end up in front of this committee, our council, for that rubber stamp approval that we seem to have been giving them based upon the recommendations, which have not changed one iota from planning? So here we are. The irony is we're approving every time a non-permitted use. Surely there has to be a better way. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your comments. Councillor Olkey, you had your hand up, and then Deputy Mayor Councillor Lackey, my apologies.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a certain amount of confusion in the room for
You're sitting one after the other.
a number of reasons. Just the wording of this. And I confess to the last time we discussed this issue, I was confused between sites. Okay. And there is a lot of emotion that flowed into those discussions that had nothing to do with the actual thing we were to focus on, which was permitting a certain type of railing on a roof. So I think we need a certain amount of time to consider these things. And I just note a significant increase in the applications. Correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Planner, but I think we've had 4 in how many years?
Through your worship, we've had 4 applications or 5 applications in 4 years.
Spurious argument.
No, I believe.
No, I'm going to let Mr. Olkey finish, please. Thank you.
It may be a spurious argument. That's true, or it might not be true, but it is a point to discuss perhaps. Personally, I was confused between one such structure that was built without permission and the one we were discussing last actually had permissions. So, but there was a problem with the railing, the type of railing on its roof. And that's what we were discussing the last one. It went off the rails. And I very much regret the way I voted on that one now. So I'll leave it there. But I think those are considerations that need to be related to this, this motion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Grell, you had a point to make?
I'll withdraw, motion to withdraw the resolution.
So you're going to withdraw, you don't want to defer it? Because we
I
could,
don't see much point in deferring, given what I've been told by planning. However, I will hold planning to their review. And if, pardon me, I won't take it back unless I'm assured that there is going to be a review on an interim control bylaw.
okay, I've got all these hands up. I'm gonna deal with, Councillor Lackey's next to speak, but I'll have the CAO speak to Councillor Grell's point.
We'll need a direction from council to proceed it with a review of an interim to control bylaw.
In order to ensure that that gets done. Got it. So before you withdraw it, do you want to hear Deputy or Councillor Lackey's
Of course.
point? Okay, I'll let Councillor Lackey speak because he had his hand up.
Thank you, Worship, for allowing me the time. To the planner, how many municipalities within water actually have control over boathouse permits? I guess where I'm going with this is basically you've got a water lot lease. And it's ruled by whom? Like, as far as I'm concerned, I believe we are the only municipality that has these hoops, I'll say.
Through your worship, like, I can't accurately answer that question. I don't know it off the top of
So-
my head, but I know that a number of the surrounding municipalities don't regulate docks or boathouses.
Because it's already regulated, correct?
I can't answer that question specifically. I know that you can zone water and we do have provisions. I don't know how we compare to other municipalities or other legislation out there.
So if I were to say Kingston doesn't, Gananoque doesn't, Brockville doesn't, I don't know about Fernie Young, but there are many along the river alone who don't, if it's a dock or a boathouse,
That's correct. They leave it up to Conservation Authority permitting.
right? You can't do anything without conservation authority. Anyway, you can't get a building permit with a conservation authority approval, correct?
Depending on the nature of the marine facility, if it's a floating dock, only permanent structures require a building permit. So a permanent dock or a boathouse would require a building permit.
Right. Okay, thank you. And the other is, one of the points in the bylaw was the fact that, you know, we may end up at LPAT due to a conflict between neighbors, which I think we'll see further along in the agenda is probably gonna happen, that we get stuck in the middle of it, which is not our place. So anyway, I'll leave that for there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Foti, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Your Worship. I kind of like the idea of deferral. We're all over the map here and where we sit on this. Obviously, we're not in consensus with this, so we're not comfortable in any one direction, apparently. I would like to proceed with a deferral.
So with a deferral, if we defer it, we have to give it a specific time to bring it back. So Madam Planner, when is an appropriate time frame to bring this back for amendment or further discussion that you can contribute more detail after your meeting with the lawyer? I know you said there would be a meeting this Friday, but that's a week before Christmas. So
Not knowing our lawyer's time frame or what's going to come out of the conversation, I would recommend that it be deferred until we're able to bring an informed recommendation back to council. I don't know if that's going to involve a legal opinion from the lawyer in terms of speaking to council. I don't know what that's going to entail at this point. So I would say following receipt of legal advice, I bring a report forward to council. Do we need a specific date? I don't know if it would be
if
January.
we said February, would that be
That would be
sufficient?
sufficient.
So this would be, so if there's a motion to defer until February.
Motion to defer.
Oh, okay, Councillor Guerrero, and then a seconder, February committee of the whole meeting, maybe? Okay. So defer. And at that time, just for clarity purposes, if this is not written in such a way that it's enforceable, it can be amended at that time based on legal opinion and guidance, if you will. Okay. So the deferral to the February Committee of the Whole meeting is made by Councillor Gurel and seconded by Councillor Maybe. All those in favor of the deferral, please signify. All those opposed, and we're carried. So, and this is the one without the seconder that threw me off in the first place. Councillor Lackey, did you have a request for reconsideration before we finalize the rest? Before I go down this path
I'm sorry, with regards to
to 8.2,
8.2.
I believe it was. That was the
Yes,
vote.
I think it was already mentioned by Deputy Mayor Olkey that we got a little too deep into the weeds on the last time. And to be honest with you, I just would like reconsideration due to the fact of the facts of what was brought before us, not what has previously happened with the property.
Okay, so the motion to reconsider is coming forward from 8.2, which is the item on the agenda. That was
And might I ask for
sorry, the
point
bylaw, not the bylaw, not the-
clarity or point of order?
Sure, go
I
ahead.
would like the clerk to read how motions to reconsider are structured. Is any previous notification required? Is it legal? Is it within Robert's Rules of Order or in our procedures to allow a motion of reconsideration outside of the meeting in which the motion was defeated? Those would be the two starting points. And thirdly, are there any other avenues besides reconsideration, such as renewal, that are open? And also one last point is, if my understanding is, if it's a motion to reconsider, it shall be taken up at the end of all other business. So those would be the 4 points for clarification. I'm not sure motion for reconsideration is the appropriate vehicle here under Robert's Rules of Order. That's all what I'm asking to start.
Clerk.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Thank you for your questions, Councillor Gurel. So a motion to be for reconsideration is within Robert's Rules of Order. It is legal. I understand that it can be done under other business, so we can leave it till the very end of action updated items.
At the same meeting or at future meetings?
Yes, at future meetings.
So,
And
sorry.
You're sure?
I'm positive, and I would just like to refer back to our procedural bylaws. So with a motion for reconsideration, such motion shall be moved by a member who voted on the prevailing side. Such motion shall be supported by a majority vote of the members of council before the matter to be reconsidered can be debated.
Uh-huh.
Prevailing
But it-
side with a nay.
With a nay, so, so you wouldn't be able to make the motion. It would have to be one of the nay
I would do
sayers.
so.
Just 2 seconds. The other part of this is my understanding with the request for reconsider or the motion to reconsider is that the decision cannot be made at the same meeting. It has to be, we can discuss the reconsideration.
Through your worship. If a motion of reconsideration carries, no such action will be taken at this meeting, and action must be taken at a future council meeting.
So we wouldn't be making a decision this evening.
And for further clarity then, what we would be considering in the future is the original, what was the motion that was tabled originally. Correct?
Correct.
So we'd be starting over.
Correct.
So the motion to reconsider is being made by Councillor Olkey. And the seconder would be Deputy or Councillor Lackey. And so that's a motion to reconsider 8.2. Planning report SR-156-22 file D14-2022-009 D14-2022-009 Application for zoning bylaw amendment 322 Stratford Lane or Stratford Road, pardon me, to rezone the existing boathouse to allow a sun deck for a flat roof.
Excuse me, I really am uncertain and I would like real clarification because here's something I want to read. Another important thing to remember about reconsideration is that there's only a limited period of time with which it can be made. In the usual case, this motion can be made only on the same day on which the vote sought to be reconsidered was taken. Does that not limit that to last week for reconsideration? There are other avenues, but just regarding reconsideration.
That's correct, but I believe in Robert's Rules of Order, it does mention that there is also a timeline as well. And I mean, given that all staff reports are brought back to council meeting, they're ratified at council.
My problem is we're being asked to vote on reconsideration regardless of a date in the future. Perhaps what we should be thinking of is a deferral to make sure that we are doing the proper reconsideration.
Can't defer reconsideration. Go ahead.
Through your worship, from my understanding, in this particular situation, it would be a motion to reconsider. That being said, again, if the motion does carry, that doesn't mean a decision has been made tonight. There is no action taken by council. This, again, would be brought forward at a future meeting. The original motion would come into play. And again, essentially what Councillor Gurley meant before, we would start over again. Again, that is if the motion carries.
And does our procedure bylaw supersede or work in tandem? Just to Councillor Gurley's point that we're following the right procedure. I just want to make sure that our procedure bylaw isn't contradicting or vice versa.
No, that's correct. It's not contradicting.
Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
When we're talking about starting something all over again, which is heard a couple of times, would that also mean that the public meeting, I mean, the access, we do the committee of the whole and then we do council. We're starting all over again with this. Would it include the whole process, including folks that came to speak to it and so on and so forth? I mean, it may be hitting you hard with that. I think if we're all going to say it starts all over again, in my mind, from a procedural standpoint, that would also include that public input.
Through your worship, thank you for your question and no worries about that. So I just like to state in section 19.6, paragraph E, if a motion for reconsideration is approved, no action shall be taken in respect of the matter under reconsideration until it has again been presented to council and council has made a decision. So in that being said, it would be brought forward again to the committee of the the committee of the whole for discussion.
So which then it would be open to the public input at that time. Follow up?
So just to follow up to say, and then I shared my point of view with council, however muddled it was. But I have to say part of the problem for me is trying to understand where a very irritating situation emerges. And I share Councillor Gorell's concern about what might go on down the road and the very nature of that environment down there gets changed irreparably by this. But as I started to read it again in the cold light of dawn, trying to understand, we turned down one thing. And my sense was, and I voted against it, my sense was that we were punishing somebody in a way, and her behaviors we're not happy about. We're not happy about other behaviors down there. But it just struck me that at a certain point, it wasn't about what came to us. It was about everything else. And that's why I think I support the idea of deferring the notice of motion so we can be clear on whether we can put a moratorium on this stuff, because I actually raised it casually a couple of times some months ago for the same reasons. I'd like to see us defer that until the planner has an opportunity to give us some background, as opposed to just throwing it out. I'm not really interested in throwing it out because I think it's an issue. I think it's the bigger issue. I'm not sure if this particular application is the one, but in a broader context, a lot of things need to be considered. The other thing is, and I'll say it here, is because we're talking about the notice of motion, is I would like to have some clarity from the clerk at some point on notices of motion, because I'm really concerned that we bring a notice of motion, take a specific action, but we haven't had the opinion of staff with respect to the legal implications or the effect of a traffic act on something. So I'd really like to understand what the point of a notice of motion is if it does not include the staff in finding out whether that the idea being presented has any legs legally or legislatively down the road. So it's kind of, I'm in the middle here, because I think, to Councillor Gorell's point, this thing needs to be wrestled to the ground, but I'd like to see it done in a way that doesn't put us in legal peril all the way up and down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let Councillor Lackey speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, I was under the impression that at committee of the whole, we do 2 readings and we do the final. It gives us a week for a sober second thought to be brought to council for ratification. So here we are at that point, and should we not be able to voice?
So it was on the agenda and it was removed from the consent agenda for further discussion later in the meeting. So technically it hasn't been decided. It was discussed at committee of the whole, but it has the ability to come back to this at this particular meeting, the way that I understand it from the clerk, because it was on the agenda and published for reconsideration. So at this point in time, there is a motion on the floor to reconsider, moved by Deputy Mayor Olkey and seconded by Councillor Lackey, to reconsider 8.2 SR-156-22 FD 14-2022-014. As made clear by the clerk, the request to reconsider would not mean a decision being made at this meeting, but that would bring this back to a subsequent meeting for further reconsideration. And the debate at that time would be fulsome and would be open to the public yet again. So that is what is on the floor at this point in time. So if there's any other questions or comments in regards to the request for reconsideration, can you please indicate now? So Councillor Gorell has asked for a recorded vote. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of reconsidering 8.2 SR-156-22. So she's going to call your name and ask for a yay or nay.
Councillor Lackey,
Yay.
Councillor Gorell, Councillor Maybe, Councillor Fody,
Hey,
Councillor Jameson,
Sorry. Yes.
Deputy Mayor Olkey,
Aye.
Mayor Smith-Gacki.
Yay. So that is carried, and that item will come back to committee of the whole at the next committee of the whole for reconsideration that time. Okay, so the next item that's on the agenda is election signed bylaw review. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Olkey, and I need a seconder on that motion. I'll have Councillor Jameson, since you brought it forward. Whereas objective research indicates that the influence of election signs on voter decisions is marginal, And whereas the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands TLTI and many other Ontario municipalities experienced a failure by some candidates to follow existing rules, thereby adding unreasonable and unnecessary workload to bylaw enforcement. And whereas TLTI residents regularly reported what was viewed as a proliferation of signs, many in unauthorized locations. And whereas these signs are environmentally unfriendly products, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to do a full review of the current election sign bylaw with the view to providing council with options for fundamental change for the use of such signs, including a ban of all signs, and bring these recommendations to council in early 2024. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Jameson.
Since I raised it,
Okay.
my only point here is to get into this early. Because I mean, particularly in Ward 2, it was ditch litter, mainly. And having spent a little time looking at other environments, we're not alone in having our one bylaw officer running around for 2.5 or 3 weeks, chasing signs mostly up in our end in the wrong spots. So I think it's just that, and our voters list and a few other things we know they need to be looked at. So if we leave it to the 6 month before the next election, that doesn't make any sense. We have a very capable clerk in place that can move this forward in a way that is calm and reasonable. And I think signs, I tried to get them banned before the last election and was turned down. And I'm not proposing a ban here. I'm just proposing we think about it. Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Got it right this time. Thank you.
Very well done, Your Worship. The issue of signs, I agree with Councillor Jameson. They were quite controversial in Ward 2. I won't go into the details, but it seemed to me that signs are part of a political tradition in this country. And speaking as someone who was absolutely unknown first time I ran, I do believe that having signs did assist me. And if you kick a rock here, none of my relatives will come out from under it, which isn't the case for most people around this table. I think the law could be tweaked, the bylaw could be tweaked, and maybe only signs at crossroads where a county road or provincial highway met a township road, as opposed to being able to go free form and plunk them down on county roads wherever one felt like it, to give the impression that someone was voting for someone when they in fact were not. So I think a tweaking of our bylaw in that way would probably suffice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Maybe, and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. This sign bylaw first came to us by Councillor Lackey about other signs, not election signs. They came to us because some signs were left for years. And that's what we really tried to get to back then. And this kind of blossomed into our election sign bylaw, which again, I think can be tweaked, no question. And I think it was helpful in some regards to get a better handle on where signs are put. I personally had 10 out, but I think the signs are important, particularly for the next go around when it may not be us here and it's a new incumbent who wants to be here. And if they don't have that sign, or we totally discourage them from having signs, it is bad. But again, it becomes a piece of freedom of speech, and that's important. And we can't discourage that. And we need to, give the next group their due to do it and get into the seat. So I would like to see the sign bylaw revamped. And there's a couple queries in that revamping that I'm curious about, because there were a couple things that I think were not quite what it may have referred to. So I think before we need to have that whole bylaw come back to us, go through it, take it apart, put it back together, and then we've got something. Thank you.
And that is the intent of the motion, I believe. So go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, your worship, through you. I think Councillor Jameson's recommendation here is in a summation in the last paragraph. He's given the staff till 2024. We have lots of time to weigh in on this and give the staff hopefully enough time to do the same. Thank you.
Did you have your hand up, Councillor Grow?
Did.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe it was the clerk that brought forward the election sign bylaw. And when we say staff, so I propose an amendment then to the resolution, the last paragraph. Perhaps we should leave it at council direct staff to do a full review of the current election sign bylaw, period.
And bring these recommendations to council in early 24.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So we would.
Yes,
we
and
would
bring
be
these recommendations, council.
striking the piece that says with the view to providing council with options for fundamental change for the use of signs, including ban of all signs, and bring these
Mhm.
recommendations to council in 2024. So
Mhm.
it would be striking that piece. So the final paragraph would read, therefore be it resolved, council directs staff to do a full review of the current election sign bylaw and bring these recommendations to council in early 2024. Is that what you're proposing? An amendment?
Yes, I'm looking for a seconder, I guess. And
Councillor Jameson?
That's perfectly reasonable.
Okay, so the amendment, as I will read it again from Councillor Gorell and seconded by Councillor Jameson, is the final paragraph would read, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to do a full review of the current election sign bylaw and bring these recommendations to council in early 2024. So we would just be striking.
so that's the amendment.
So the amendment is to strike with the view to providing council with options for a fundamental change for the use of such signs, including a ban of all signs. That is what is stricken from that paragraph. So I'm asking for a vote on the amended paragraph. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? It's carried. So I'll read the amended motion. Moved by Councillor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Jameson. Whereas the objective research indicates the influence of election signs on voter decisions is marginal, and whereas the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, TLTI, and many other Ontario municipalities experienced a failure by some candidates to follow existing rules, thereby adding unreasonable and unnecessary workload to the bylaw enforcement. And whereas TLTI residents regularly reported what was viewed as a proliferation of signs, many in unauthorized locations. And whereas these signs are environmentally unfriendly products, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to do a full review of the current election sign bylaw and bring these recommendations to council in early 2024. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay. Done. Next item is 10.8. Councillor Lackey brought forward strong mayors, and the motion is moved by Councillor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Gorell. Whereas the Government of Ontario, through the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has introduced Bill 3, which is described as an act to amend various statutes with respect to special powers and duties of heads of council, and for the head of council of the City of Toronto and the City of Ottawa, that will be expanded to include other growing municipalities. And whereas council must work together in concert with the mayor as a consensus builder in order to accomplish local initiatives, and Bill 3 presents a very significant shift within the system of local governance in Ontario. And whereas this bill will give mayors additional authority and powers and correspondingly take away authority and powers from councils and professional staff, which include, but is not limited to, giving the mayor the authority to propose and adopt the municipal budget, determine the organizational structure of a municipality, establish, dissolve, and assign functions to committees, and veto decisions of council. And whereas these are surprising and unnecessary changes to the historical balance power between a mayor and council, and which historically gave the final say in all matters to the will of the majority of the elected council. Therefore, be it resolved, a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Honourable MPP Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and all municipalities in the United Counties of Leeds, Grenville. So the motion is on the floor. I won't speak to it first as much as I want to speak to it first. because I'll just let it go for now.
You're the mayor.
Because I'm the mayor and all the veto power. Oh, Lord have mercy. I'll let Councillor Lackey speak and then Councillor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Premier Ford has said some pretty stupid things in his lifetime, and the other day.
Lackey, decorum, please.
Pardon?
Decorum,
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I tell a lie?
decorum. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. To say that, for instance, a ward which has a smaller population should not have the same vote as, I'll use example, Ward 3 and Ward 1. To me, they're equal. They should be equal. The residents' votes are equal. This, as far as democracy is concerned, kind of doesn't go with the grain. And I think that as far as giving the mayor the powers to do provincial interests or direction, that's not needed. The premier has that power. I don't believe he needs to put us in the middle to do it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Olkey, and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a number of points I'd like to make. First of all, having seen countries where people don't have democracy, it's a real mistake to let it erode and to stand by and let it erode. I personally could not do that, having seen the results of it. Next, I would say in our own country, there are forces beyond us and beyond Queen's Park that are leading to some of these things. And I would hope other citizens would recognize it, perhaps in their own realm, speak out. We have a federal government that says it wants to bring in 500,000 immigrants per year. We know that 300,000 of those immigrants will go to the Greater Toronto Area. There is not a housing crisis in the Greater Toronto Area, but there is a shortage of affordable housing. I believe Queen's Park feels its hand is being forced. And if you read Minister Clark's editorial in the Whig Standard recently, you'll see very much that Queen's Park feels it's being forced and has to take some extraordinary measures. But Minister Clark tries to explain those measures. He has not received a fair shake in the media. There's been a lot of distortions about it, and there's a lot of confusion and fear mongering. And I think our Canadian media are part of the problem. But anyways, they're part of democracy too. I support Councillor Lackey's motion, and I support it very strongly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I also support Councillor Lackey's position on this and Deputy Mayor Olkey. This is a bad precedence that seems to be taking place in this country, both provincially and federally. It's happening at both those levels. God forbid we get it at this horseshoe, because we will hear it from literally the voters themselves. The provincial and federal levels have a buffer zone, that being us, of keeping the voter away from them to a point, although there was protesters that come out and made their points, and kudos to them. But yes, I strongly endorse this, and governments need to reconsider their goal on this. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll make my point. I have no desire to have veto power. I have zero desire. If this was to come into place within our municipality at our level of government, and I have to bear the weight of everything, potentially, whatever I choose to see fit, or somebody pushes me to do something. No, thank you. That's not what I signed up for. I signed up to sit at the council table with other members who have different backgrounds, different expertise, different skill sets, so that we can sit around and talk about things. Whether we agree or disagree is irrelevant, but we're here to have a discussion so that no one person makes this decision. So I appreciate the motion coming forward, and I wholeheartedly support this. in that I have no desire to ever sit as a strong mayor. I think we have a strong council, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay. Next is mayor's update. Here we go. So, special council budget meeting is going to be held on December 15th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So, we are going to feed you. You don't have to brown bag it that particular day. And apparently I have to bake. So I will do that. And we appreciate everybody's time and attention. And should you have further questions, the treasurer has left for the evening, but if you have any questions for the treasurer, any clarity required, it's an excellent document. It seems to flow very easily and be very easily understood, at least in my opinion. But I know that she would welcome any comments or questions or queries in regards to the budget document that was circulated. So please be sure to reach out to her as soon as possible. And we can also discuss it further on Thursday. So I'm attending our last county's council meeting of the year, which is December 16th. They did move it up week. Part of that is in case as some kids are off school that week before Christmas rather than the week after. Some of them are going back on the 3rd. So there is a bit of a scheduling change. I also wanted to bring attention to 2 items that were done recently in the press. Canadian Geographic did an editorial piece on the Thousand Islands and showcased the beauty of our area, but also showcased some of our businesses. And for that, I'm grateful because of the circulation of that particular group and the weight that it holds within the publishing industry. Also, NAR City, which is more of a local publication, actually did a review on Candy Cane Lane in Gananoque. And if the residents in TLTI haven't had a chance, I would highly recommend that you go into Gananoque some evening and enjoy the display in front of Town Hall and down by the water that they've worked so hard on to make the town look so pretty this time of year. Not to mention all of our other villages within our boundaries. They have also done a lovely job to welcome people to our area. So the Victorian Christmas dinner is being held on December 16th and 17th at 6 p.m. at Furnace Falls Farm. Please go ahead, call ahead for tickets and online. Our township hours for the upcoming holiday season are posted on our Facebook page. The township office will be closed at noon on December 23rd, closed on the 26th and the 27th, closed on noon on December 30th, and closed on January 2nd. Keep in mind that our next committee of the whole meeting is on January 9th. Keep an eye out for 12 days of shopping, eat, spend, and enjoy local campaign on our social media platforms. And I encourage you to support local this season. Happy holidays to all, one and all. Wishing everybody a safe and happy holiday season on behalf of myself and of course of all of you. I'm sure we look forward to continuing to serve in 2023. Did I miss anything that needs to be said? I'm going on to announcements. Councillor Lackey.
I'm sorry, through you to the fire chief. Was there something with Station 3 for Christmas?
Oh,
Yes, and through your worship, Station 3 is having their dinner just at their own station on Monday evening. And if any council is interested in attending, just let me know. They just do their Christmas dinner.
so that would be the
That's great.
19th of December?
Yes, 7 p.m.
Okay, so council, if you'd like to attend, please let them, what time is it?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.? Okay, thank you.
It's 17 December.
19th.
19th. So if there's, if you need further details, I'm sure you can email the chief and he will get those details to you. Thank you for the invite. Any further comments or questions? Okay, we have Councillor maybe.
Thank you, your worship. Again, just to reiterate some of your comments, the Santa Claus Christmas parade in Gananoque was well attended by even the township, and I appreciate all that effort and anybody who showed up. having a little bit to do with it. And we had an excellent time. Also, the Candy Cane Lane, Chamber of Commerce, BIA, Visitor Center, Town of Gananoque, just so many people involved. I had the pleasure of opening that up also. And also with the events days going on during the weekends for the Rotary of last weekend, Lions Club coming up, and many others who are participating in it. But please do go and see it. It is a wonderful spectacle that which our area can be proud of, and the hours that were put into it. And lastly, I like to wish everybody around the table and in Radio Land a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And may we all be healthy, wealthy, and wise in our new year. Thank you.
Okay. Any further announcements in regards to anything going over the holidays? The only other thing that I would say is that we did enjoy a lovely staff dinner, lunch here the other day, and it was great to see so many council members come out and enjoy the lunch as well. We appreciate all of our staff who work hard, especially this time of year when we're talking about cleaning roads, different times of night and day, long days, long nights. And we appreciate that, along with all the other staff members that work hard, especially through the holidays, even our landfill sites that have to stay open to accommodate the waste that does come from Christmas. Unfortunately, that's the byproduct sometimes is the packaging. So while we celebrate, they are there and opening and making sure that the garbage goes to the dump rather than the side of the road, hopefully. I see Councillor or Deputy Mayor Olkey has his hand up. Eventually, by the 2 years, I'll get it right.
I was somewhat, thank you, Your Worship. I was somewhat expecting Councillor Jameson to make some kind of update announcements since he was so involved in so many of them. But I'd like to give a shout out for Ward 2 and our many functions. You did mention the upcoming one at Furnace Falls Farm. Our Santa Claus Parade was a great success, in which I'll say that both Councillor Jameson and I turned ourselves and our vehicles into floats and participated. And subsequently with Santa Claus in Sealy's Bay, he was forced down by very severe crosswinds, and the councillor and I provided immediate elvish support to Santa. And I would say further that the Shop and Hop was a great success as reported by the merchants. So Ward 2 is in the process of Christmas as we speak. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I did see some pictures of two elves duking it out beside Santa, but I guess maybe that was the wrong picture. Anyways, any other announcements? Seeing none, I will go forward with the confirmatory bylaw or the confirmatory bylaw. So its motion comes from Councillor Olkey, seconded by, I'm missing a name. Anybody want to second that? Councillor maybe? That 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaws 22-076, 22-077, 22-078, 22-079, 22-080, 22-081, 22-082, 22-083, and that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 22-084, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands at its December 5th Committee of the Whole meeting and the December 12th Council meeting. All those in favor of the motion? Oh, question. Oh, I got a question on the confirmatory bylaw. Hold the presses.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under 13.3, bylaw 22-077.
Sorry,
On
13.3. I just want to make sure I'm at the right.
that's the OLG MCA agreement.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just a typo. If you go to page 6 under the calculation of annual contribution, I read it and then I thought this is a little confusing. I'm assuming the first square, if you will, a time frame under table A should read April 1st to June 30th, because if you look down at the bottom of that same frame, it the month of March overlaps.
I don't have the report in front of me right at the moment. Just wanted to. Go ahead, Sierra.
I will raise it with OLG. I think it's a housekeeping matter as far as a little tweak to the schedule. But
But the intent is to accept the increase in revenues?
Yeah.
Just so we'll correct the dates if that's.
I
okay.
believe that's all it is, just a misprint of the date. It encompasses the month of March twice. I don't think they have a 13th month fiscal year.
I'd be happy if
Yeah,
they
we-
paid us.
Should we,
twice for-
are we allowed, we could have mayor's power and substitute a 13-month fiscal year. Thank you.
Thanks for the catch. Kenai. Okay, so it is confirming that we are signing that bylaw, provided that correction is made, just to correct the date. Any further discussion on the confirmatory bylaw? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed? And we're carried. And next item on the agenda is adjournment. Moved by Councillor Grell, seconded by Councillor Lackey, that council adjourn at 8:49. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.